Hey everybody, Texas Stroker here, Lance's Performance Shop, Lone Star, Mopars.com. It is Sunday night, kind of cold out here in the shop. It's actually a leap forward day, so we get an hour of daylight back like we should never have taken away. When you leave time alone, you don't wind up leaving work at 5 and driving into the dark abyss of the night, because that's always fun, right? But nonetheless, good times ahead here. We're up to, I believe, this will be KC Tool Haul number 28. And if I'm not mistaken, German tool reviews might have stopped at 27 or 28. He's on a hiatus. You have no idea what I'm talking about. I will leave his channel link down below. This is a guy that started doing KC tool hauls long before I did, and has a lot of really good content, highlighted a lot of stuff I haven't, and he's got some pretty in-depth and thorough reviews for those of you looking for any additional information. So it's always important. It's kind of weird. You don't ever envision overtaking someone quantity-wise, right? But I guess kind of with the hiatus and everything, it was bound to happen. Plus, I'm coming in literally from the old Craftsman stock, like high school and college days only. So there's probably a little bit more to purchase. But nonetheless, like I said, I'll have his channel linked down below. This particular order was, of course, inspired by a tool of the day. It's an item I'd wanted for a long time. And at Tool of the Day, I could not really pass it up. And there are a couple other cool things we tacked on in this one. So, first thing first, we got our bit of thanks. Once again, these have gone back. We're not getting the Wiha, numbered 13 of 24, which we got number 13 like 90% of the time, it seems like. But nonetheless, this is kind of back to the glory days when we started. It was a Philo bit, then they went to the Wiha stuff, and now with this, it's actually a Wera bit. So keep that in mind, always included with your order. If you exceed the $100 mark, you actually get the German sticker pack, which, spoiler alert, we've exceeded the $100 mark here. And the promotional flyer included this time is once again from Wera. The round of screwdrivers, that's actually a pretty good deal for anyone wanting to invest in their line, particularly if you know you like the handle style or the tips. And a couple of other items here and there, some other things, but like I said, we'll cover that shortly. And with that note, I guess we'll get started with the smallest item in this order, and it is a piece from Wera. Their part number, let's see, is going to be 27456. Set me back all of $6.29. And truth be told, at work, I was having to do something. What was it? I think it was on the lathe. This was a while back, so I'm having trouble remembering. Might have been when we got a new tool holder, if I'm thinking correctly. Anyway, I had to go in and I had to get a precision screwdriver. We have this ancient set of Wihas that I don't think has been used very frequently, and they're still in like the plastic blister pack, right? And there's always this one, and I was like, man, that's strange, because we're using it, of course, for the precision screws, and you don't really think about anything. And then there was the one that had the forked tongue. I'm sitting there thinking, man, like that's I'm surprised they would have had this funky type of security screw. And I'm like, what equipment had it? Maybe CNC machines is all I could come up with. Turns out it was a chip lifter. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And that is what we have here. This is a chip lifter. If you're thinking, okay, well, what are we doing? Puffy Cheetos maybe? It's not going to work really well with thin chips like Tostitos. This is actually, of course, for computer stuff, right? If you did not know, I do build computers for people. I make kind of the high-end gaming ones, right? But, that's another story for another day. This is where this would come in really handy. I'm not quite sure why you wouldn't want it to be ESD, but ultimately what my logic was is I didn't want to come in and purchase the Wiha one, right? The old set at work, that would be like their original style. They've gone now. That was an important piece of paper that just fell. But this is sort of what I'm going for here, right? I wanted to see, of course, it's one thing when you have like a full-size screwdriver, it's another entirely different thing when you're going precision. I wanted to kind of just have this to see how well I liked the handle. And of course I was thinking if I ever did upgrade, this would be something really handy to have, and we'll just kind of take it from there. So that's what that is. Again, the part number is on board. It maintains the classic stylings of Wera handles. It's got the spin at the top. Not terrible really to have that bolt. It's almost like some pins. That's sort of where they have their safety position, right? But this is what I have in terms of new precision drivers here at the house. The other precision drivers I have are going to be like really, really cheap ones. I'm talking like the little foam in the plastic case. It looks like baseball cards would have been in it. You know what I'm talking about. They're not really knurled. It's more of like a ribbing. And usually anytime you try to use them, even with it being on something precise and small, they break. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about there. So really that is just so I have it, because I do think it would be handy. And two, like I said, I kind of want to compare and contrast the handles, see which one I ultimately like better. With that said, I guess we could step in. You know what, let's do this, okay? In, I guess, the last KC tool haul, we brought in the Gador ratchet, the big one, the telescopic one, right? One that I had wanted for a really long time. Didn't really have to have, thought it would be a good investment in terms of its breaker bar capability. The fact that we can then retract it and it doesn't take up all, 2.5 feet or something crazy sitting in the back of a truck. And I wanted to get a hat to go with it, right? Well, this one kind of ties in with something we brought in a while back. I think it was out of stock is why I didn't do it at the time. But I thought it was a good looking hat, and it is from Stahlwille, right? This, if you just type in Stahlwille hat, you will find it. I'll have it linked down below as always. The part number, I think it's going to be 91970-800. And there is a problem. Okay, this is a Velcro type, which a lot of people do prefer. And I've got it set almost to the cutting edge there. There's really not much left in terms of it's still going to hold. Doesn't really fit well. Okay, I don't know if I have a ginormous head. I don't know if this is terribly undersized. A lot of times with hats and t-shirts, like once you're accustomed to a t-shirt, like say everything you order online is Gildan. You're like, okay, I'm a large or I'm an extra large, yada yada, you go to town with it. Then maybe there's something that pops up. You want to maybe, I don't know, KC Tool launches a new shirt, or they start stocking something from Hazet, and you're like, I got to get that t-shirt, and it'll get me free freight. Awesome. You come in and you buy the large or the extra large like you always wear, and it is either ginormous like a tent, or it's way, way too small, like so small it might not even fit your wife type of small, right? And some hats are like that, and this is one of those that's kind of like that. And it's not a kid size, this would be an adult size. I can get it on, it's like way tighter than I typically prefer. It's also kind of a low strung hat for what it's worth. It looks really good though, I like the logo. Personally, just stylistically, instead of having sort of this off-white, I think that would have looked killer if it was green. That's just me. But I think I can make do with it. I'll probably just keep it out here in the shop, and if I'm doing something nasty, I'll probably throw it on, kind of protect my head from sparks and grinding debris and all that sort of stuff. So not a total wash, but there's really no recourse. There's not like the bigger size I can go get, but I don't know. You always kind of wonder, like promotional wise, like particularly overseas in Europe, you figure like that stuff would just be thrown in. Like if you're always buying stuff from the Stahlwille guy, he's probably going to like just throw hats at you. It's like, how many employees you got? Just here, we got these. Where I work, and the number one thing people throw out is not necessarily pins anymore. It's like everyone's big on notepads, and I've got huge stacks of them that I'll never go through. And it's sad because once I find like a design I like that works, I kind of write small. They've typically phased out, and then once I burn through that stock, it's done. Then we have like some local freight lines that give them, and instead of being like full size, they like go down to like the half size, and I guess their logic is they can get 2 notepads for the price of 1. But yeah, hats are good advertising, and like I said, I will be able to wear it, so it's not a total loss. But speaking of the precision stuff, right, we've got our little Wera chip lifter here. We've got the relatively new from Wiha set up there. I've got experience with their old style from work. What I want to do here is hit on this from Wiha. Now, Wiha Pliers, of course, are made in Vietnam. That's kind of a barn burner for some people. Big turnoff. Some people won't even consider them. A lot of people are like, oh, look at that. I can get this for 15 bucks. Everyone else wants 45 for the same pair of pliers. Screw that. So what if it sucks or isn't as good? I can get 2 or 3 of them and call it a day. There's lots of different ways to look at it. But ultimately, their bi-cuts, sort of their high performance, side cutters, those have been great. The pair that I bought after that had a pretty bad surface flaw. It doesn't affect the performance, but some bent needle nose pliers I got from them, where they're bending down and this gap should be flush right there, right? It's like whoever was grinding it just took a huge chunk out over here. So it almost looks like something I would have done, an end user type of a deal. You're being rough or abusing it or something, or the steel wasn't good. Nope, that's how it was delivered. Now, the performance side right here, where you start having the teeth and where it closes, that's fine. But it's kind of something that you would think would have been caught in quality control and scrapped or heavily discounted type of a deal, and instead I wound up with it. And you know, as much as I like them, I can't, you know, it does me and you a disservice if I just kind of glaze over that stuff. But what I brought in here is something relatively cheap. Again, what's the price on these suckers? The hat, by the way, is $12.11. These pliers, what in the world are they? $22.07. I think they were discounted when I bought them. I don't think I paid, but maybe like 15 or so. I guess that price is off because I always look up the current price before we start. What is it? Well, it is just standard heavy-duty combination pliers. They're 8-inch. So again, you've got your holding section, got your cutting section. They're 8 inches long, 200 millimeters for you metric people. And the biggest thing, though, it's their industrial soft grip. Why bring in another pair of pliers when you're disappointed? Well, was that consistent with them? I don't know. I've got 3 pairs of their pliers. 2 of them have been great. One had a factory blemish. This I kind of wanted to see, and more importantly, I'm going to put these through the paces. I want to see how well I like their grip, you know, this industrial soft grip, if you will. So flipping it over, we kind of get some of the highlights here. It's made from C70 tool steel. It claims 40% less effort to cut because of a dynamic joint. As you can see there, the jaws themselves are going to be 64 on the Rockwell scale, induction hardened. Serrated sure grip jaws. Again, I kind of like crosshatch. That's a personal preference. A lot of times you can't find crosshatch. Depends entirely what you're doing, but for what I do, the crosshatch I would say is generally preferred. And then an ergonomic soft grip handle. That's really the big highlight here. This is kind of one of their cheaper pairs of pliers that I could put the soft grip on, see how I like it, see how it does over time. That's exactly what we're going to do with it. Let's just go ahead and spill through this. Extra long cutting edge for flat and round cables. Serrated jaws, cutting edges additionally induction hardened to approximately 64. Special C70 tool steel for gripping and holding, as well as cutting soft and hard wires and cables. 2-component industrial soft grip ergonomic handles, and the cutting capacity is number 7 on the American wire gauge. Part number 30907. Price once again currently at KC Tool $22.07. There are multiple sets of these where you can kind of invest if you're really curious, or you know you like it, or you're gonna like it, or you're just gonna buy it and go with it type of a deal. There's a couple of good sets where you get something like this, side cutters and needle nose pliers for a pretty decent savings, particularly if you're the type that wants like the pouch or the case or whatever they include with it. Their packaging is kind of cool. Again, it's sort of set up for retail. The big thing, again, I know it's Wiha, but these pliers are made in Vietnam. So take from that what you will. It's probably just a factory they set up. Now, the good news on these, they look fantastic. I mean, in terms of blemishes out of the box, or something that's wrong or objectionable or questionable or makes me say, well, that should have been discounted, there's nothing. Fully closed all the way there. The teeth look good from this side. The side cutter, you know, there's no gap, anything crazy like that we can see. Branding is on point. The handles feel good. I will say they were a little dusty. Not crazy dusty, but just a little bit, for whatever that's worth to some of you. You can actually see they've got the industrial there. I thought they had the part number on these things. There it is. Let me open it up for you. If you can use your imagination, you'll see it right there. They've got the Z0202-200, which I'm sure that probably cross-references somehow. But there's the joint. Note, not much issue opening. I wouldn't complain about that. Some people might. Typically, anything crazy I've had, I get broke in within a week if I'm actually using the pliers, so it's not a huge deal. The fit shears have been the craziest pliers I've ever had to break in, but I think that was just like a grinding issue. In terms of the teeth, right here, as we pan in, you can kind of see there again, this is where, if you're using these for gripping and holding, okay, The teeth are either going to be good or they're just going to be bad, and they're going to be bad quickly. And we're going to determine that relatively soon. And then, of course, right there we have our cutting edge. Note, if you look at the blue on the Mopar M back there, if I get my fingers out of the way, you can see the blue. Now you just see the cutting edges close. You can do that because they've got that sort of painted or coated in black, and then the blades are kind of a lighter color. So there's no, I've got my finger now back there, there's nothing. So you can see it kind of up here in the grip section, and then you see no skin there in the cutting area. So that's all good. They seem to have done a decent job on these. The question is, how well will we like the grip, and how well will the pliers hold up and perform? Ultimately, only time will tell. So that's exactly what we're going to wait for. Speaking of that, joints on pliers, and we've already referenced German tool reviews. For many of you, the only place you will have heard of this stuff is either maybe it's recommended on a KC tool order or at the bottom. If not, really the main place that you're going to see this stuff is on German tool reviews. And this is one of those things, I never really didn't have a need for it, right? I've got my like WD-40 and all the spin-offs and everything. And what I am talking about is right here. This is Ballistol. Interesting little product, kind of one of those like miracle oils, as you can see here, multi-purpose. Lubricates, penetrates, protects, and preserves firearms, leather, knives, tools, locks, marine, wood, metal, rubber. It's eco-friendly, skin-safe, no carcinogens. Suck on that, California, it is combustible. And also of note, for those of you particular about country of origins, this is made in America. Now, I do believe it's going to be limited to ground, so if you're like going to whip this out on a KC tool order, next day air it, not going to really happen for you. And I will say, just like with most things, the bigger quantity you purchase, the more you save. Case in point, this one, the part number, which again we'll have linked down below, it's going to be B120076. That's a 16-ounce can, 22 bucks. You can get a way smaller can for not much less money. I'm coming in buying this in good faith based on what I saw in German tool reviews. And if you're thinking, okay, well, if you've known about this and you never brought it in, why? Why now? And why the 16 ounces? Well, like I said, if I'm going to get something, I'm going to go ahead and get the big size, the economy. If it sucks, it sucks. If it doesn't, you know, I've saved myself money in the long run. What I plan to use, I know a lot of people like the wipes. They are available in that form as well. There's also small oilers. You could get something like this, which, by the way, I've never made a video on this type of a thing, but all of these suck. Okay, all of these. And that says trans fluid, and if you're wondering why that rubber band is kind of purple and stuck, it's because it leaks trans fluid. Not necessarily even out of the oiler, it leaks out of the case. And there is one, I think I may have mentioned this before, but I finally found something that doesn't suck at work. It was a really, really old one, and we have a ton of them. And I never really thought to look at the brand. And I did one day. It was goldenrod. It's made somewhere, I think maybe Omaha, Nebraska, somewhere in Nebraska. They're not expensive. They're fantastic. They don't leak. Don't buy the trash, just complete trash from Harbor Freight or like the parts store. They're going to leak. They're going to frustrate you. They're going to waste your time and money. Spend just a little bit, pennies more, to get the good one, and call it a day. You will thank me later. So goldenrod, yes, a lot of times they are gold. If you're curious why trans fluid isn't one of those, a lot of times when I haven't run a motor in a long time, or it's like somebody brings something over and it's been sitting God knows how long, transmission fluid down the cylinders is a really good penetrant. And it will smoke something funky. Let's say you get the car running, you like put a kit in the carb or something, you get it fired up. Yeah, it's going to blow some white smoke for a little while, but in my opinion, that's one of the best things you can do. So nonetheless, back to this, I opted to go with this. This is also from KC Tool. It's $2. Could I get that cheaper somewhere? Probably, but I would have to pay freight on it, and then it's a complete waste of my time. Could I run into a store and grab one? Absolutely, but when was the last time you saw just a sprayer? Okay, you're going to have to get a spray bottle. And I've had absolute nightmares with spray bottles and things like that. I think I've featured it in Amazon tool hauls before. But bottom line, I genuinely believe, and this is why I did it myself, you're going to save money just buying this for $2 from KC Tool when you order this and bring it in. But why did I do it? Was it those Wiha blades that I was mad at for flash rusting? I'm going to try to clean those up, but it's going to go back to this guy right here. We're in the middle of our German cable knife shootout. This is not a candidate, and I'm glad it isn't, because I still cannot open this thing. I was out here a couple nights ago, and I was just literally opening and closing this while I had fluid draining. And it never seems to get better. I'm at the point where before I go in and just either dismantle this or throw it in sand and start sanding on things myself, I'm going to try this. We're going to throw the Ballistol on it. And the interesting story, of course, this came from Germany. It was kind of for the Imperial Army, but it was threefold. They wanted to clean the guns, right? Okay, so you've got your metal, but then they also wanted to clean the stocks of the rifle, which is what? Wood. That's right. Early 1900s, we're going to have wooden stocks. And so what do we have here? We've got metal and we've got wood. And I'm excited to see what this is going to do. We'll make a standalone video on it, and I won't waste your time here, but rest assured, this thing does cut decent. I have used it, but it's a nightmare to open. It's not enjoyable to use because it's such a pain in the butt to open. And I'm hoping that this works miracles, and then if we like it, we have it on site, we have it on hand, we're ready to go to town. Now, on that note, I think we're going to have to stand that up, kind of set it off to the side for a little bit. This is something I don't know that many of you will be excited about. I, personally, am extremely excited about it. It's from Knipex, which that should perk some of you up when you hear that. I'm going to roll the part number off my tongue real quick. It's going to be 5101210. If you're thinking, that last 3 digits, that's usually the length. And you know, 200 millimeters is 8 inches. You know, this is just a little bit more than that. It would translate to 8.3 inches. Obviously, coming from Knipex, it's going to be a pair of pliers. But, what pliers, you're asking yourself? You're thinking, I know my cobras, alligators, and raptors and everything, and that doesn't really sound familiar. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's see what you know based on what we have here, okay? I'm going to drop this down into the frame, and you're just looking at the ends here, and you're thinking, wait, that's strange. Those are like parallel handles. You know, what's going on? I don't remember that. What pair of pliers would a guy have parallel handles on? To make tin snips or something weird? You're not going to like using those, buddy. You want something kind of contoured a little bit. As I drop it down, you're like, okay, I have no idea what's going on here. You know, this is bizarre. Is this really even Knipex? You're just screwing with us, right? Well, check it out. I'm gonna hide this over here, and you can see the part number. I'm not lying to you. See the Knipex logo. You see made in Germany. It's their plastic, which this is the one thing. I wish you could get this, not necessarily in their like comfort grip padded style, but just in the textured one. I think I would prefer that. It's something I might look into, maybe pulling these off and trying myself, but enough screwing around. Now you know what they are. Some of you should anyway. These are pincers, and pincers, some people just use them strictly for like end snips. Case in point, if we wrapped a cable tie around this, what's the easiest way to just come in and butt up with minimal work from your other hand? It's end cutters like this. And, that's not necessarily what I use these for. And I'm going to be full disclosure here and honest with you. At work, probably, it might have been 2 summers ago now. It's quite a while. I picked up a pair of channel lock pincers. I think it's like they're 357 if I'm not mistaken. And it's one of those things you don't really ever think about them. And then when you have them, it's like, man, you know, this is such a great little tool. And it's going to vary. You know, a lot of people, this is a carpenter tool, according to Knipex. But what I run into at work, okay, when I get motors in, they come in a box and it's stapled. And you get the box opened up and there's, you know, the easy to remove staples. You get those out. And then there's like the heavy duty staples that they shoot through like the thick cardboard uprights into the pallet. And those are kind of hard to deal with. And then of course, if you just pull the cardboard off, you've still got that stuff there. We like to donate our pallets. We like to try and have all the sharp edges out for people. And I'm the guy that's back there having to do that. What I was using, and one of the reasons I loved the bi-cuts from Wiha, I know I mentioned it, I think I might have had pictures and videos of it, but essentially with their bi-cuts, it wouldn't be a combination plier like this, but just extend that all the way to the top. It takes a little bit of finesse and control, it's not like it's some super skill set, once you like crack through 2 or 3 staples or nails, you're going to figure out a pressure point, typically. And what I do is I come in and I would grab down, and of course I'm not trying to cut through the staple or the nail. I'm just trying to grip into it and hold it. Then I come around, depending on how it's stationed on the pallet, and I either bend it out or I roll it out type of a thing, and I pull the staples out cleanly. Now you could come in and like try to flush cut them, but in my opinion it's better to just pull the staple out all the way, have it completely gone so it's a non-issue moving forward. And those pincers have been absolutely fantastic for that. And this is, of course, from Knipex. I'm not necessarily planning on taking these to work. I'm planning on using these here. Now, again, in full disclosure, it is way, way less frequent that I have anything like that here at the house I have to contend with. However, when you buy bigger automotive parts, maybe if you're getting like an air compressor in, or like a fuel injection kit or a rear end, a lot of times you're going to face similar packing obstacles. If you're thinking, man, this pallet's going to be great, I'm going to throw a transmission on it, or I can fit, my spare center section, whatever it might be. If you're wanting to reuse that, you don't want all these nasty staples sticking up. So when you go and you grab it, you just get cut on the forearm next time, right? That's where these would come in. These are also going to be used with fencing. Fencing is not, I'm talking like, wood planks, 6 foot, 8 foot, right? Not, like dressing up and going to town with a sword type of a thing, but not classical fencing, like real world modern fences that blow over in the strong Amarillo winds. What happens there when I have to rebuild a section, okay? You've typically, the wood rots, and even around here we don't have much moisture, and so over time it just happens, and typically, you can kind of like, I've developed a system that works for me. It's probably not professional, but I get the job done pretty quick and kind of step out. But then ultimately, if I'm either trying to reuse the back 2x4, which is rarely the case, that's typically where the rot out is, right? Even if 6 feet of it's good and you just have that one little section, bottom line, there's a lot of nails going through the planks into the 2x4s, and I'm able to typically kind of bend down and get the nail head revealed, and then I can just grab and pull. And a lot of times, especially if it's like really rotten or soft, you can just lift up and have that nail out of there, okay? That's where these are going to come in handy for me. Now at work, I would absolutely love having these. There's a chance I might take them to work and see how I like them against the channel lock doing the same task. But for now, this is going to be like a super awesome overkill pair of pincers for what I do around the house. I think it's well worth it. Part number, once more, is going to be 5101210. This set me back all of $31.89. Now, there's tons of different options on these. And you can come in, you can get them super long. I think you can get them shorter. I felt like this was a pretty good size. It would handle pretty much anything I wanted it to, and it would have plenty of leverage. The big thing here, and the advantage over using like side cutters, which is not the proper tool for the job that I was doing at work, is the fact that this, note that it's not flat, right? It's like a half round type of a deal. That means as I set this down, if I were to grab a nail head right there in the middle of that blue, when I rotate it like this, it's automatically fulcruming, okay? It's not a deal where I have to initiate it or bend it or put the edge of the tool down. It's automatic, and that's what you want. That's why these are desirable. Now, the catch is these are still special. There's something on them that's a little bit different. And when we look there, you're like, hey, they really are Knipex, and there's your part number. And right there, it's with striking face, and you're like, what? Striking face, what? These are pincers, there's side cutters, end nippers, all kinds of different names. What do they want you to do? Like, you're going to use this half round and hammer down on something? That's stupid. There's nothing over here. Oh, why is that ground down? You're never going to need that. You're just going to roll the nail out. Check this out. Think about this. What does that look like? If you didn't know that this was a pair of pincers and I had that covered up, a lot of you would think that you are staring at a very small hammerhead. And there's a good reason for that. That's kind of what this is designed to be. So, take into account, not the staples that you're pulling out that you have no intention of reusing, let alone putting back into the set pallet. But although you could just tap them flush if it's not a big deal to you. Imagine this scenario though. You pull the nails out, and then maybe it's just like one little plank, and you took these out there to pull them, and you're replacing one plank that broke in the wind. This now becomes a way for you to drive the nail home. Okay, it's like a hammer. It's a two-in-one type of a thing. And whenever I've dismantled the fences and pulled out all the hardware, this is something that would be super handy, because don't even think about it in that sense. All right, like let's say that this black knob is our nail on the Milwaukee knife here. So you're going to come in and you're thinking, no, you know, why on earth, why would you sit there with even just, you know, 6 nails, you know, 2 on each of the 3 supports? Would you come in and just nail that home? Think about it on the dismantling side, okay? So now picture this as the back side. We have the plank free from the 2x4, and we want to use new. All right, kind of losing my voice, and also this timed out my recording, and I have no idea where, but nonetheless, where I was going with this, I've got this Milwaukee knife here, and let's say that this is the nail head in your plank, okay? So we come in and we've got our striking face, and we're going to hit that in. And some of you are like, no, just get a hammer, you know, get an impact, get a screw gun. And I agree, you know, I've started using screws instead. It's superior. But if you're just going to tap that back into place, it would work fine. However, think about these in their business end, right? The fulcrum effect I mentioned, how easy it is to pull staples and nails out. Think of this as the back side now of the 2x4. You've got the nail head face down. This is the sharp point of the nail. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to come in, I'm going to tap that lightly. I flip this over. Then I use my pincer side. I grab the nail. I pull it out from the head. Okay. That's where these are going to be really, really cool for me. And I'm, like I said, dorkily excited to put these into use here. So this is the thing, if I'm doing that, am I going to have a hammer with me? Absolutely. If it's a situation where I'm like running by a friend's house and I have these, you can get by without the hammer. It just totally depends. But for the price point of 31 bucks, and there might have been like, there's a pretty big, like, almost all the companies had like that decent first quarter sale. Might have got them slightly less than that, but I mean, even as is right now, these would be 31 bucks. If you deal a lot with packaging, these would be a godsend. I know it's kind of overkill. People don't really think of it, you know, and like pulling staples out of a pallet. You will never go back to whatever it was you were doing prior, I promise you. The channel locks I have held up beautifully at work. From time to time, you do accidentally cut through. It just happens. It'll especially be prevalent when you're first getting started. But once you learn that kind of pressure point, it's going to vary per plier, right? I don't know, you know, what point I can grab with this without cutting. Maybe these cut way better than the channel locks. Who knows? But you'll figure it out. You know, you might have a couple that you have to cut and then pull out individually. But ultimately, come in, grab down, fulcrum out, and then like I mentioned, in the case of like repairing a fence, getting the pickets off type of a deal, this is going to be really, really good. You can tap the back side of the nail, get the nail head here, pull it out, and then in the pinch, if you did not have your hammer, you come in, you could take your new picket or the backing or whatever it is, and you could literally just drive the entire nail through if you're so inclined. So I'm very, very happy with that purchase, and cannot wait to put them to use, see how I like them, see how I think they compare to the channel lock. The channel locks, I think I picked those up at Home Depot, probably like 15 to 20 bucks. So yes, they are cheaper. They are not near as big. They're probably, just based on this being 8.3, I'd say those channel locks are probably 6.5, somewhere in that range. It's the 357 if I'm not mistaken. The head is a lot smaller. The handles do actually kind of bow out traditionally, so you're going to have to kind of figure out, do you like the parallel handles, or do you want, you know, kind of the contours with them? Take it from there. I will say this though, Knipex, NWS, a lot of the German plier companies have pretty diverse selections of pincers, and the prices, you can come down, you can get them as cheap as like $12 to $15 from NWS. So if you're curious, if you use them a lot, if you're wanting to try something different, definitely keep that in mind. Now, with all that said, we have reached the conclusion, the final item, the tool of the day. This is one of those things, if you recollect back to the start of this video, where I had this Wera Flyer here, right? There's something on there that we're looking at in this frame that I've mentioned multiple times. It used to be the Jokers. I was like, yeah, I think I'm eventually going to bring those in. And of course we did. And then there is something else. And I said, you know, if it ever happens, I think I'm going to have to pull the trigger on that. And if you don't know what it is, well, let me step over here, get all this packing out of the way. Not sure where this is going to fit. Let's get our precious little chip lifter out of the way. My queso dunker, whatever it turns out to be. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. In this nice, you got to, again, hand it to Wera for having like the sleekest packaging. You know, I don't know that other companies really care about it, but when you invest the money in something kind of high end, it's cool to get it and be like, wow, you know, this is impressive packaging. Some of you will just open it and throw it all away, but at least for some brief moment in time, you thought, hey, that's pretty cool. And maybe they could, you know, drop it down and save us, you know, like 20 bucks or something. But hey, you know, for what it is, very cool, and I appreciate that. This, though, is Wera Koloss, or Koloss, I don't know. Multiple ways to pronounce it, I'm sure. K-O-L-O-S-S, however you want to pronounce it, you do that and don't criticize me. How about that? Everybody's happy. Now, this is another 1/2-inch drive ratchet, and just like we had the Gador last time, the sort of the telescoping one, and I said, man, this has the ratchet lockout where we can use it as a breaker bar. This, you could possibly use as a breaker bar, but that's not really the highlight here. If you're looking at this and you're thinking, hey, you know, kind of looks like those little hammerhead pincers that you got where you can strike down on stuff, huh? Well, think of this along those lines. This is essentially exactly what that is. This is a 1/2-inch drive ratchet with a built-in hammer, because what do people do when they have a 1/2-inch drive ratchet? Well, they've got it here, and you've got to get your, I don't know, let's just say like transmission cross member reinstalled. You rebuilt the transmission, you got the cross member lined up, and you start threading your bolt through, you know, like this, and it's through the cross member, and it's through, like, you know, the body, the frame a little bit, but then on this side we need the threaded part of the bolt to come through, right? So what do? Well, you're down under the car and you've got your ratchet and you're like, oh, this won't hurt anything, and you start hammering it home. All right, not really the best thing you could do for your transmission cross member, and particularly your ratchet, let alone you run the risk of marring up the threads on the bolt. But people do it. They do it all the time. Wera knows that. They probably had people returning the Zyklop, or maybe their own engineers or product testers, and they were taking the side of their ratchet. You know, you're not going to be dumb enough to use the drive end or the handle or the quick release, I hope. But a lot of people on the side of the ratchet is like, yeah, you know, it's going to get the job done. So they would just come in, whale away, drive the bolt through, put the nut on, call it a day. I'm sure over time, you know, they're like, well, why is the side of your ratchet beat up like that? It shouldn't look like that. You know, are you just dropping it all the time? What's happening? And it's like, oh, you know, I hammer with it. Somebody must have had the idea, like, if people are doing that to my tool, my fancy cool little ratchet, we should just put something on there so they quit screwing up the finish. It's going to, you know, reflect badly on the product. Or and maybe they think like, oh, hey, you know, hammer plus ratchet in one, that's going to sell a ton of tools. Regardless of the backstory, this is how it came about, and this is the end result. So we're going to quickly, again, because I know since we timed this out, that's the 30-minute mark when it does that to me. We're going to slide this off if I can. All right, so here it is. I'm thinking the box will hinge. Nope, it just lifts off. That's fine. So here it is, kind of top to bottom there, sort of hard to fit in the frame. We're going to set it down. This is what is included. And some of you are going to love this. Some of you might not be as impressed. For a lot of you, it's going to be like the greatest thing you've ever seen. You're going to go buy one. Others of you will be like, that's really cool, but I'm going to wait for tool of the day too. And that's what I did for a really long time. And then it came up, and I was like, awesome. So took advantage of it. This is the kit. I think you can get this broken down in several different parts. I believe you can buy just this section. Then I believe you can actually get the extension handle separate. I think you can get the carry pouch separate. I think you can get this quick release separate. Just sort of all depends on what you're wanting to do. Now, as we set this down, I gotta say, I am a little disappointed. The reason for that, I fully expected to have, you know, their little tattoo sticker in there, and it is not present on either the top or the bottom of the box. So that's a little bit of a buzzkill. That's not the end of the world. I know a lot of people really look forward to that stuff, and I thought with this being a bigger item, you know, maybe it had a chance to have a big one. Also, this was broken, right? A little plastic tab. No, it's kind of just a convenience factor, really. Anyway, there's no sticker in there. This is essentially, think of this as a carry pouch, right? You're going to slide your belt through here. The carabiner holds the quick release, and then the ratchet actually drops down through here. I know what you're thinking. A lot of you like, oh, that's cheap. That's going to fall apart. I'm skeptical as well of anything canvas like this, but I will tell you, everything I've had has held up surprisingly well so far. So I've kind of learned to give them the benefit of the doubt there. This is it though. This is the Koloss. We'll probably make a standalone video on this. If you're thinking, man, that's some trash steel they've used. It's got like an indentation there and a stamping. What's the problem? Doesn't even sound good. This is actually a pad, okay? So if we wanted to, we could come in and I can take this off. Now, why on earth would you do that? Well, quite simply, not all the time do you want a hard surface. You sometimes want a soft striking face. For example, if we were putting in, say, some really expensive metal in the lathe, or we have the square jaws on, we're trying to dial it in type of a situation, you're going to want to factor that in on occasion. Maybe you don't want to damage the threads. Use the soft face, you're going to be less likely to do so. Now, there is a catch on this, and if you're sitting here and you're thinking, what's that hole? How do you change directions, Does this only tighten? Does it just loosen? What's the catch? How do I swap around? Well, think about it. It's a push-through drive, right? And the reason for that is it's going to be way more robust. And again, this is not going to be like a fine-tooth ratchet, super low swing arc. If I'm thinking correctly, it'll do the 600 Newton meters, which is kind of standard for the hardcore heavy-duty stuff. It's more than you really need type of a thing. But you can just listen to this, and you're thinking, oh, that's not a high tooth count. And it's not, but again, it doesn't need to be. I think the return is 6 degrees, if I'm not mistaken. These are equal faces on the hammer, as best I can tell. That one's a little bit more blemished, just kind of like some shipping crud, I'm sure, as opposed to this one that had that soft striking face on it. But essentially, when you would come in and use the side of your ratchet as a hammer to drive the bolt through the cross member, now, instead of marring up the finish or potentially damaging or shocking the mechanism, you've got a tool designed for that. You can go to town, drive the bolt through, be done, and then push this back through, tighten it, loosen it, whatever you need to do. However, when you've got a tool that's massive like this, okay, and it's purpose built, and you think, okay, well, we've got a 1/2-inch drive ratchet. It's not going to break on people. By the way, we can come in and take that snap ring off if you want to clean it or grease it. Should be pretty easy to service, is what I'm seeing here. You think, okay, well, how could we make this even better? And the answer is make it longer. Telescopic would have been awesome, but that would also probably drive the price point up a ton. Currently, you can get this. It's still on a 40% off sale. So this is one of those things where usually if I do something tool of the day, get the video out, even if it's quick, it's no longer tool of the day, and you can't save the money on it. Tool of the day made this thing really cheap. But right now, Wera still has the 40% off, so this thing is $95. If you are in the market for a 1/2-inch drive ratchet and you were wanting to try a new company or a new brand or see what Wera's like, or you wanted maybe your first soft grip type of a thing, and I will say the grip on this is pretty dadgum good. It doesn't quite have the contour of a Wera screwdriver. I know there's the bulge there, but if you note, it doesn't taper the same. Think of this more as like a contour on a hammer. This handle here, I wouldn't say, it's not objectionable at all to be a ratchet, but I would say it's more akin to what you would expect to have with a standalone hammer than, say, on a ratchet that was an individual tool. So, when this is hollow, and you know that this is here, which again, this I believe you can purchase it all separately. I'll have links to that down below. Probably a standalone video as well. This is the same thing. It's not like a screwdriver. It's more like a hammer. When we flip it, you can see kind of the specs there, and you'll kind of see a release at this point. We've got the O-ring. You've got the shaft kind of keyed, if you will. So what I want to do quickly, let's just sort of drop this in place for you. And I just locked her in. So it's got a very slight wobble at the joint. Nothing objectionable, particularly if you're just using this to break something free. But again, the train left to right like we had with our Gador one, you get the idea. It's pretty long. Now, the cool thing, I'm not advocating this, and I can't do it because I don't have a lift. I'm thinking if I did have a lift, and maybe I was working on like a survivor car, right? And I'm coming in doing whatever, maybe trying to get like the K-member bolts off or something that's never been off the car in 50 or 60 years, where you would typically come in and you would just leverage down from the backside. Again, this isn't advisable, but you know, if you're having to make do and you're a solo person, you could potentially grab onto this like a monkey bar, an overhead type of a deal, and put all your weight on it. And then once it starts to break, just pivot back and use the you know, low side of the handle, the bottom of it, however you want to refer to it as. I think it's a neat option. You can certainly get things done in a pinch. Now, if you're thinking, okay, so how do you get that off? That's not going to fit in my toolbox. Don't want that in my trunk. What do you do? Well, you're kind of shafted, unless of course you have this strike right here. And let's see if we need a tool to release it or not. There we go. So no extra tool needed. I didn't know if we had to like tap on it with a hammer or not, but basically we just put that in there. It drives down. I'll show you what it's hitting real quick. It's tapping down right there. That just depresses that, and then we're able to slide this out. It is kind of a tight fit. That O-ring's probably dragging. This keyed section is kind of a funky little rectangle with a rounded edge. Should be very secure, but again, that is what you would do to take it apart. And in terms of the additional length, that's what we're getting right there. Now again, I don't want to waste a ton of time on this because I need to go in and eat and get a drink and everything along those lines. But similarly, I think we'll probably make a standalone on this guy, just because it is kind of a cool tool with a lot of different features to it. But like I said, it is available separately. The kit is probably the way to go, particularly if you're going to actually use this to break something free. But if you're someone that is always using a ratchet to drive bolts through frameworks, you know, whatever it might be, this is a ticket. It's specifically designed for that. It's got the soft face pad, and yes, these are available separately. I think they're either $5 or $5 for a pair of two. Don't hold me to that. I kind of glanced at it the other day. Something I will probably never get to use much is this right here. If I was at work lugging it around, I don't really see the need for me to carry this around at all times. You know, like side cutters, yes. Combination pliers, sure. Knife, absolutely. But this thing, yeah, I don't know about lugging it around. Some of you, though, particularly like maybe heavy equipment, you probably do carry that around, and this would be an awesome selling point. If I had a lift, like an overhead where I could just walk under a car, I might actually do that because it would be convenient to have the ratchet and the hammer at my side and not have to, I guess I'd still have, depending on the style of lift, I'd either have a place to set tools or I wouldn't. I'd probably have a cart nearby, but anyway, I do everything on my back, so that won't be useful for me automotively here for a while. But with that said, I don't want to cut it too short on you. At the same time, I don't want to make this excessively long. Again, this is kind of the tool haul. I sort of try to highlight it, explain why I buy it, and then if we want to go more in depth, we will, which I do believe is going to be the case with the Wera Koloss. So I know a lot of you probably bought this thing on Tool of the Day. If you did, they started to come in here recently. What are you thinking of it? Are you liking it? Have you used it? Is it sort of, you found it's like more of a gimmick and you don't really use it? Do you stick with what you had? And then for the people that really do hammer stuff through with their ratchets, this is a huge deal, and it's a very versatile, very well purchased tool, I would have to say. Again, currently it's not Tool of the Day pricing anymore, because I think I got this for in the 70s. I mean, it was absurdly cheap, but with the current 40% off, which is really good, and I think it runs through, we've got the flyer right here, March 31st. You're going to have a couple of weeks left, hopefully, when I get this video out. Might have to expedite it for you or make the standalone ahead of time. I don't know what we'll do, but you still have time to get it for the $95 mark. I think it's well worth it. Again, if you've used it already, let me know your thoughts. If you haven't used it, are you guilty of using a ratchet to drive a bolt through? A lot of times, I get it, you don't have a hammer, it's too far away, it's in the truck, it's across the shop type of deal, you're thinking it's just one bolt, not going to do anything. everybody's been there, everybody has their story, and I'll leave it at that. So I got to get inside, get the night wrapped up here, and get back to work tomorrow. I will say, currently the Hazet knife has served its week of work well. Let me dive down into the pocket here. There she is. It's the cheap steak knife plastic one. But in terms of the blade, which is the important part, again, my apologies, it gets dirty. It's not straight out of my pocket, in all honesty. This thing cuts really well too, so zero disappointment on that front. It opens way better than the Ghidorah and NWS. But for this week, again, we're going alphabetical. So we've got Ghidorah, we've got Hazet. We're jumping to Knipex. We're going to be taking that thing, seeing what we think of it. Pretty excited about that. But I gotta say, in terms of just cutting performance, zero complaints from the Hazet cable knife. So, kind of unrelated, but related at the same time. I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned a little something. Again, we've got our Ballistol that we're going to try and throw down on this pesky NWS 4-in-1 cable knife. We got these awesome pincers, which I was probably way more excited than most people would be about. We got the giant Wera Koloss, which again, that's been a wish list item since shortly after discovering KC Tool. And it's cool to pick it up, not only on sale, but on Tool of the Day price on top of that. Zero complaints there. I'm excited to get a pair of these soft grip handles. We can kind of see how they hold up over time for us. And we got the Wera chip lifter, which I will use, and also we can kind of see, do I like that, or do I like the Pico or the Classic? What is, I can't think of the other name. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter. I'm losing my voice. I'm going to get inside. Thanks for watching. LoneStarMopars.com is the website. At LoneStarMopars on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Follow along wherever you prefer. And with that said, I will catch you back here in the next one.